I'm sorry if you find it boring. If you do, you probably aren't watching it. So there's no real point me apologising to you.
What's up, YouTube?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's good.
What's up, YouTube?
Hello. This is part 2 of the Monty Python 1979 debate on the life of Brian, and we've done the first bit where it's mainly just them talking about the film, Michael Palin and John Cleese, that is, and now we're going to see the debate begin between some old duffers and the Pythons, and I find this very interesting, very funny in places, and it opens up a lot of debate and questions, and I will try to make some intelligent comments, and probably lots of very unintelligent comments will be made by me as usual, and yeah, let's just dive straight into Life of Brian 1979 debate complete. Part 2.
And I guess our guest reviewers are Markham Muggeridge and Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark. I'd like to ask you, Bishop, first, what was your review of the film?
Well, first of all, I was very glad to think that you simply can't get rid of Jesus in Europe.
He does a very good impression of a pompous arsehole, doesn't he?
Today, Ceausescu of Romania, who I think thought, like most communists, that they're going to get rid of religion very quickly, find that it's, as he said, it's going to hang around with us for quite a long time. And certainly, when you think of what the greatest attractions on the stage, both films and acting, ever since Jesus Christ Superstar, that's what's drawn the crowds. I mean, Jesus is a most disturbing influence. You simply can't get away from him. You may worship him, respect him, commit your life to him, or just ridicule him and lampoon him, but you simply can't get rid of him. And this is what I think is a very, very interesting fact. Even in China, in their changeover now, they thought Chairman Mao's thoughts had replaced the thoughts of Jesus, but poor old Mao and the Gang of Four now really they're on the dog heap, and Jesus is being allowed back. So that, first of all, is something which I find extremely interesting.
I mean, it's the old thing that apologists for religion say, isn't it? Oh, but you know, everybody knows who Jesus is. Well, yeah, he's a historical figure that lots and lots of people go on and on about. So it's pretty hard to not know who Jesus is, and that's not really an argument for validity of a religion. I mean, I could say, you know, everybody has heard of the earth, therefore we should worship the earth. It just won't go away, will it? It's always been there. Oh, I mean, it doesn't work for me. Anyway, religion is declining. All the major religions are declining and have been for about 70 years. Check out the stats. It's not going to go away completely, I'm sure, but it will decline slowly over time.
Now, the second thing well, here's a question I would ask. What are you really trying to say in this film? I believe you were on this a wee bit earlier, but unfortunately we only got the picture outside, not the voice, which was something that husbands might want for their wives. But so we didn't quite hear your defence.
Nice little bit of cheap misogyny there. Husbands might want from their wives.
But what are you really trying to say? Now, I wasn't the least bit horrified. And people say, oh, no, Bishop, when you go there, you'll be absolutely horrified. I wasn't at all. After all, I wasn't vicar of the university church for nothing. I'm familiar with undergraduate humour. And I was also a governor of a mentally deficient school. And once I was a prep school master, and I felt frightfully at home. I was just sort of back on the old familiar ground this evening. But I really wondered, what you were trying to say. I do hope you don't think I'm being unkind, because I know some of you, and I am very fond of you and have respect for you. But I say this quite frankly, I simply don't think it was worthy of you. It was the sort of thing, as I say, that at Cambridge the footlights did on a damp Tuesday afternoon, or the lower fourth when I was a schoolmaster.
He's quite witty, isn't he? He's a typical Church of England, or even could be like a Catholic holy man, quite witty, very well educated. Obviously, he's a good orator, and he sort of manages to get the crowd on side. He's almost trying to be as funny as the Pythons, isn't he? I may be religious, but I can make jokes as well. But anyway, that all falls away, which is quite amusing.
But I just don't know what you were saying. Then the third thing, and this I get rather more serious, why lampoon death? I think this is the thing that really is, sort of worried me. I don't think one would make a farce about Auschwitz or of death. And
the producers?
Well, whatever we think about Jesus, we may think he was the Son of God, we may think he was a mistaken fanatic, but it was a pretty shattering thing what happened, the crucifixion. And as I looked at that, and I thought of now the way people react to the cross, and after all, I'm not ashamed to wear the cross here, which is the sign of a bishop. When I look at that figure, I know you're going to say Brian isn't Jesus, but that's just rubbish. The whole thing is quite clearly, if no Jesus had lived, that film wouldn't have been produced.
But did you feel that the film actually ridiculed Jesus?
Yes, I did.
Even though it wasn't about him and...
Well, I'm afraid, you see, I can't take it wasn't about him. I put that as a matter of honesty. If Jesus of Nazareth had never existed, there'd never been a Jesus, then this film of Brown would never have been produced. I'm sure that's so. But if I might just say...
See, this is something I hate about the upper middle classes. They've spent their lives being listened to, so they speak slowly, and they won't let anyone interrupt, and they will just speak on and on and on, because in their minds their point is very important. You get it a lot with consultants, especially consultant psychiatrists. I used to be a mental health nurse. This slow, deliberate, you have to listen to me because I'm very important. A horrible, annoying throwback to the past, and yet of course it still goes on.
And then do come and cross-examine me then, but my mind is just sort of working on that last scene, sort of the reaction. There it seemed sort of tremendous sort of joke, and people were laughing. And then you think of the reaction of a person like Mother Teresa to that.
Mother Teresa, the racist fraudster.
Seeing what it meant for her. Now she's saying, I'm not. But every day of the week I either say Mass or I'm present at Mass. I was this morning in the early hours, and I broke the bread. This is my body. And I took the cup. It's
not your body, mate.
Blood. And I didn't roar around with laughter at the altar in my chapel this morning. I just fell down, genuflected, and worshipped, said my Lord and my God.
What, he genuflected in front of other people? It's disgusting.
No, I don't think really that you come and get at me now.
Well,
I'm not criticising any of you personally.
Well, I hasten to say that I had absolutely nothing to do with the film whatsoever. But before I ask John and Michael to perhaps answer one or two of those points, could I bring in Malcolm and ask you what your review, if...
Malcolm Muggeridge is a truly wonderful person, as you will see. Self-effacing, humble, I would say. It's just a lovely man.
Certainly, yes. Remember that I was engaged for 4 years in the appalling task of trying to make English people laugh. As editor of Punch, it's an almost impossible thing to do. I couldn't help feeling enormous envy of the ease with which this particular film aroused laughter. You simply had to use a 4-letter word or display a man's private parts in the window, and the whole place fell on the ground with laughter. So that I, professionally felt rather put out by that. Also, of course, I agree entirely with the bishop that it is quite humbug to say that this is not a ridiculing of the founder of the Christian religion and of the Incarnation in an extremely cheap...
He will say the Incarnation many times, by the way, and it gets very annoying.
and 10th-rate way. Remember that story of the Incarnation was what our whole civilization began with. Remember that it has inspired every great...
Our whole civilization didn't begin with that, did it? Because our civilization began basically about 13,000 years ago, and this happened allegedly about 2,000 years ago, so shut up.
Great artist, every great writer, every great composer, every great builder, every great architect, that to celebrate that marvellous thing.
Germany,
the
Inquisition and so forth, it's sort of...
Yes, the Inquisition.
Suicide bombers.
Nothing can alter the fact that if you were to make a list of all the greatest works of art in all fields and all the greatest contributors to those works of art, you would find that this scene of the Incarnation, the story of the Incarnation, has played the largest part. Now, in our 20th century, this film produces a sort of graffiti version of it. And I don't think, in the eyes of posterity, it will have a very distinguished place. The bishop mentioned Mother Teresa, and I was thinking of her too, because to her, you see, and it's something that the makers of this program maybe didn't even think of, but the person of Jesus Christ, not as a historical figure, not as someone in the past, but someone living in the world now, has been the essence of her existence. I once asked her what was the difference between what she did and what social workers do. And she said, well,
it's tax-free.
The point is that social workers are very estimable people, but they do something, they serve their fellows for an idea. I serve my fellows for a person. And
no, for an idea.
If that person wasn't there, or if that person was in some way discredited, then my work is over. And there are many people in the world, despite the fact that the media would suggest the contrary, to whom still this living presence of Jesus Christ in the world is the most essential part of their existence. And you produce it in a film as a derisory and absurd figure. And of course, to someone who has that feeling, as Mother Teresa has, or someone like Catherine Bramwell Booth has, they are deeply hurt and insulted. That doesn't in itself matter. I'd like to put another point to too that occurred to me when I was watching it, which
Malcolm,
is...
I'm awfully sorry to interrupt, but is it possible for John perhaps to answer one or two of them?
They really do fucking drone on, don't they? self-importance.
Certainly.
Otherwise, we're going to have
Certainly.
9 points unanswered. But
Yes, it's building up the list a bit. But I mean, the problem that we... No, seriously, the problem that we have got is that you think that we're ridiculing Jesus. And we say, sort of sincerely and truthfully, that is certainly not what we intended to do. And I believe that we're not. And I can best answer that, I think, by answering Alvid's question, which is that what were we trying to do? And I think it comes out, it was spelled out perhaps rather too plainly, rather too banally at one point, when he says, make up your own mind, don't let other people tell you. And we would absolutely deny, at least I would, that there was any attempt to say you should not believe in Christ. What we're saying is take a critical view, find out about it, don't just believe because somebody tells you to. Somebody in the pulpit says something, question it, work it out yourself.
You're seriously suggesting...
And that is a good point, well made, and with a certain amount of brevity. Brevity, I say. The incarnation. I know it's easy to laugh at Malcolm Muggeridge, and that's why I do it.
If someone saw that film, say a young kid who knew nothing about the Gospels or about history, that the figure of Christ that would emerge from it, this story of the incarnation, would be a noble one, would be...
He would have to sort it out for himself, and he would have to, for example, work out, I mean, does one accept every word in the Bible? In the Sermon on the Mount, did they get it all right when Mark wrote it down 30 years later? I mean, was every word right?
But is the film likely to be seen by anybody who doesn't know an awful lot about Jesus Christ?
Most certain it is today. If you have it for children of 14 today, you will find that the many children of 14 today, thanks to the secular nature of the education they're receiving, know nothing about it at all. And they would...
Incidentally, 30 years after Jesus died, it was written down in the Gospels. And you do have to remember that the average life expectancy probably wasn't much more than 30. So 30 years would be the equivalent now of it being written down 80, 70 or 80 years later, maybe 90. No recording devices, no mass media, no nothing. Word of mouth, essentially. That's a long time for everything to be completely accurate.
See this figure,
I think,
in the light in which he appears in this film, you see. It's no good you cheating yourselves. You can't have it both ways. You produce this particular film which arouses bursts of laughter, as I said earlier, rather easily procured. But don't imagine that someone seeing that is going to go away with the concept of the founder of the Christian religion and all that that meant to mankind in any way corresponding to what history or the Gospels or anything else is presented.
Well, it's not supposed to be about him, so people shouldn't go
But
and
it's
see
no
it
good
to
saying
learn
that it's not about
I'm
him.
not being dishonest. I mean,
You're being utterly
Can I
dishonest, my
just
dear
say,
chap.
yeah, I mean, I don't know where this will get us, but I feel my approach to the film was I was confused. I feel I'm still asking questions, seeking solutions. I am very confused and perturbed by a religion, an established religion in this country, where people can go into church on a Sunday morning, and the same people can sing hymns and say prayers, and at the same time these people can stand by while their money is spent making bombs, making guns, building up appalling weapons of destruction, can sit by, sing hymns, say their prayers, and agree with a policy in which hospitals have to go without money.
First of all, I'd very much like...
Very relevant to today's times, isn't it? Times haven't changed much at all.
There we'll get your evidence. You must give me chapter and verse. So it happens that immediately before coming here, I was asked by crowds of church people if I would stand up for the councils of the health of St Olave's Hospital, which the government is trying to close. The church is extremely active in these fields, and I would urge you not to make these careless generalizations which are not dependent on evidence. Now,
I make them in all humility. I'm seeking answers and solutions. I'm not saying this is absolutely the way it is, but I have observed people...
I mean, what was saying, it was great, but it's sheer rubbish. And you made a ridiculous generalization which is unworthy of an educated man. Now, having said this, back to what you said, somebody aged 14 coming and seeing this thing of Jesus, what you are seeing is not one of the greatest teachers in the world. I mean, granted, lots of people, the majority of people wouldn't accept him as the Son of God as I do, but surely most of us would see him as one of the greatest teachers of the world. Now, you wouldn't guy Socrates or make him appear as a clown. And what I think
maybe
this
there are funny
film...
things about him.
What?
Maybe there are funny things about Socrates. Why shouldn't we make jokes about
Well,
Socrates?
if there are certain aspects that you would not Socrates.
No, that's not my point. I don't know enough about
Socrates also
Socrates.
was
Maybe he's
murdered.
funny.
He was made to drink poison. You wouldn't guy him at that point or make him appear as a clown. And what I say, and I'm afraid you won't alter my conviction, John, over this, is that this most, what is to a Christian, most sacred moment of the whole Jesus experience, namely his death, that at that most sacred moment he was guyed and made to look as a clown.
See, that's bollocks, isn't it? Because what he's basically saying is, you wouldn't make fun of any historical character, would you? Of course you can. Of course you can. Of course you can. You can do... It's essentially what he's saying is he doesn't like the fact that he thinks they're taking the piss out of Jesus because he's a Christian. But obviously you can joke about historical figures, all historical figures, and if Jesus was a historical figure, then he would be included in that. Let's not talk about Muhammad.
Make another point is here, which is rather interesting, that if you'd made that film about Muhammad, you see, you would have
Actually, didn't know that was coming.
hullabaloo in this country.
A hullabaloo.
Because all the sort of, the racial, anti-racialist people would...
So, oh dear, he's now going to have a go at the Muslims. But that's the point, isn't it? That it's overzealously religious people that make it dangerous to laugh at religion, isn't it? And that's not a good thing. And that's essentially what they're doing. They're pissed off because he's attacking their religion. They would not be there if they'd made a comedy film about Nelson, would they?
Would have risen up in their might. The same people who would approve of this and would have said this is quite disgraceful. And behind people's minds would be the thought of maybe they might lose a bit of oil, by doing it. But you see the difference.
You're right, Malcolm. I mean, 400 years ago we would have been burnt for this film. Now, I'm suggesting that we've made an advance.
And I'm suggesting that compared with other presentations of this great event, the Incarnation, you have not made an advance, and that anybody in the future who might dredge up this miserable film, and it's quite possible they might as a piece of social history, they would certainly not wish to relate it to the thing, say, Chartres Cathedral, which is built to the glory of Christ.
Not a funny building, actually.
But they might want to compare it with 40 Towers.
Yes, they're not even intended to be a funny building.
Well,
this guy, look at his little facial expressions. The Bishop of Bath and Wells, there, that face. He looks at the crowd. He hears a little bit of laughter. Oh, he loves it. He's so happy that he's witchier than Monty Python.
Even intended to be a funny building.
Well, it has the gargoyles on it,
Michael.
I think that, and I've seen this in the sort of reviews of the film, they concentrate always on the religious angle. even before they've seen it, they've decided this is a film about religion. I don't think it is entirely. I think that what we've chosen to do is what we've always done in Python. We've done for 3 series and done for 3 films. We have taken a certain group of people, which are generally sort of England in the present day, and put them into a historical context. I think that's what we've done with this film. I think it isn't entirely about religion. It's about the people who live in, anyone who lives and makes up our society today.
It's also...
It's very true. The Judean People's Front are really socialist workers. The socialist workers, aren't they? Scabs and all that stuff. That's exactly what they've done.
about closed systems of thought.
Or what they did.
Whether they're political or theological or religious, whatever. Systems by which whatever evidence is given to the person, he merely adapts it, fits it into his ideology. You show the same event to a Marxist and a Catholic, for example, they both of them fine, they both have explanations of it. I mean, it's what to be pompous poppers on about with falsifiability of theories. I mean, once you've actually got an idea that is whirring round so fast that no other light or contrary evidence can come in, then I think it's very dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous to someone like Malcolm, because he's actually a very nice man. But I think he is the sort of guy that this film is actually having a go at, because I don't think that there's any evidence that can come to him now that is going to make him think, am I right? Am I making a mistake?
Well, you can leave that out. I think I could say with utter sincerity that there was nothing in this particular film that would lead me to want to change conclusions that I've reached after living for 76 years in this world.
Is there anything? That's the point I'm making.
Well, in this film there was nothing that could possibly, because the film itself bore so little.
No, but the point I was making, Mark, is not film. Forget the film. Say that's rubbish. Okay. Is there anything that can happen to you now that could cause you to change your mind?
But of course, every single person who is alive and spiritually alive is constantly reviewing his faith. I do not believe for a moment that there is a definitive faith and you say, there it is. But there's nothing in this little squalid number that could possibly affect anybody. Now, in that sense, I give you this point. I give you this point that there's nothing in this film that could possibly destroy anybody's genuine faith. That I grant you absolutely not, because it's much too 10th rate for that. But
it's for someone who's clearly so educated and esteemed in the public eye, he really does start now stooping to a sad level of basically just throwing school ground sort of playground insults at the film. Pathetic.
But what I still contend is that someone who is young, 14 years old, seeing that without any particular background, might really imagine that that buffoonery is an expression of this great episode.
Well, which... you see, I was also, you talked about the presentation of Christianity. I mean, I went to an English preparatory school and an English public school, Clifton College, sort of sports academy.
I sympathise with you.
I was given 8...
You classist little shit, Malcolm Muggeridge.
10 years of a form of Christianity which I grew to despise and dislike. Largely, it insulted my intelligence. The sermons that were given at the age of 11 and 12, I felt insulted my intelligence. When I got into writing this film, and we all had exactly the same reaction, we started to discover a lot of stuff about Christianity, and I started to get angry. Because I started to think, why was I given this rubbish, this 10th-rate series of platitudes, when there were interesting things to have discussed? There were factual things. Nobody ever told me that they don't know what language the Gospels were written in, that they don't even know who wrote them, and they're not even sure what cities they were written in.
Then you must have read very superficially at your school.
Look, John, it's very bad luck for you, but you see, I used to go to Clifton College to preach very often when you were there. I know the headmaster, I know the staff, I know the servants. All I can say is you must have been as idle a boy, as splendid an actor as you are.
So I think we'll stop it there for that part. Very interesting stuff, really is. There's also a whole generational thing going on here, isn't there? I mean, essentially, all four of these people who are debating are really from the same class, pretty much. They're all sort of, by today's standards, anyway, public school, university, very much into academia and learning, and I don't know what backgrounds the Pythons were from, but I don't think any of them had parents who were coal miners. But obviously these religious guys are that much older. It's a generational thing. You can see the change from the old order of, they will have been born in the 1920s, I would guess, Malcolm Muggeridge and the baby-eating Bishop of Bath and Wells. But the Pythons, I guess, were born in the 40s or 50s? 40s maybe. So yeah, interesting, very interesting stuff. And right, yeah, so we're going to do part 3, but that's part 2, and I love this. I'm sorry if you find it boring. If you do, you probably aren't watching it, so there's no real point me apologising to you. And if you do find it boring, obviously you can turn it off. You don't have to watch the whole video. That would help me and my channel if you do. Anyway, thank you. I think the last part is where the shit hits the fan. It's not really shit hitting fan. It's more a fine mist of excrement landing on a room humidifier, but still it's quite fun to watch, and yeah, very entertaining. So enough of me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe. If you have subscribed recently, thank you so much. My channel is slowly but surely getting there, and I hope you enjoyed this. I will see you in part 3. Don't nobody go nowhere.